Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Andrew.
Atitra, Caitlin.
And we're here to discuss a few more articles from the Green page at the CMU PTM blogspot, address at the bottom of the screen. Please do check out the articles if anything piques your interest. First article for this session is one of my favorite from this week.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. Let's start with the discovery of the Ten Commandments Sphinx under the earth after 91 years. And this is from Variety.com.
Yeah.
Basically, this is just like, oh my god, this is so funny. So like, archaeologists has discovered like in the middle of like the desert, you know, like this
outside of LA,
huge sphinx, which happened to be part of the set for this film Ten Commandments that shot like back in 1923.
And then was
remade. And then remade. Yeah, so I think it was back when we don't have this kind of technology like digital things, so we kind of like when we have to film something, if something needs to be built like huge, it needs to be huge, and that is why like they kind of like after they shot it, they're like, why do I have to like take it back? Just leave it here, and then they're just like buried underneath the sand and wind and stuff, and like
that was the conventional myth was that the crew had actually blown the pieces up and buried them in a trench before leaving, but apparently they did not, because the pieces are still intact after 91 years. I've actually I feel bad to say I've never seen this movie. I've seen the 56 one with Charlton Heston, of course, because I'm a huge Charlton Heston fan for some reason that I don't really understand.
We won't get into that.
Well, Planet of the Apes is one of my absolute favorite all-time movies. So just throwing that out there. Maybe tells you a little bit about myself. And I'm talking the original, not the Marky Mark version.
I wish it were the Marky Mark version. That'd be amazing. That would tell me more about you, actually.
So I don't know the movie. However, I am a big fan of a couple of other movies not from this era, but from the big scenic studio era. Cleopatra is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Of course, yes.
And one of my favorite scenes in all of film history is when she rides into the Forum in Rome on this enormous rolling sphinx.
Right.
Oh yes, yes.
If you've ever seen production photos from that movie, all that stuff, they just built it. Like they just built it.
I think it was super amazing back then when they kind of like had to like do this section of work. It's like pretty.
But on the flip side of that, of course, they also threw all of that stuff away.
It's very wasteful.
So,
I was thinking the same thing.
A lot of the sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that like the thing I loved about this article was just this idea that like it was archaeologists that found this prop. It's so funny. I mean, does it count as
archaeology?
But
a lot of the comments actually focused on this question. What is archaeology if it's discovering things that are only 90 years old?
And we kind of knew where they probably were.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't, but they did.
But they did.
They were looking for similar things, and they found this. I don't know if it's sort of a distinction without a difference. Like it almost doesn't matter to me. I think one of the things we could say is that archaeology in this day and age could be discovering things that happened a minute ago, right?
Sure.
You know what I mean? In our kind of sped up existence. Right. There is classical archaeology, of course, but you could kind of use a lot of the same scientific practices to sort of discover what people are doing even right now. And of course you can call that anthropology instead.
I think it's probably more anthropology, right? Because wouldn't archaeology be a little bit more like these things are lost and they're found? Maybe that's like a ridiculous distinction I'm making.
I don't know.
That's
the interesting part of the conversation for me.
Can it be lost if it was only a
Does an artifact have to actually be ancient in order to be discovered in this way?
Maybe true.
What do you think? What do you guys think of this? If like 200 or 300 years from now, someone suddenly like discover
this podcast,
or even like Disneyland, underneath the desert, like they dig through it and they found this guy with a beard carrying holding hand with the giant mouse, and they thought it was like people like 300 years might be like worship these things.
You do wonder.
Probably true.
But I guess my question about the archaeology thing is, okay, maybe we can rediscover something that's a minute old, right? But maybe archaeology is one of those things that will be made or rendered irrelevant because things can't be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so my question with like Disneyland is like, are we ever gonna need to rediscover that? Like, we'll always know it was there. We have all these records, but maybe there's such a barrage of information that stuff will get inevitably lost. Yeah, I just don't know. Yeah.
Well, we'll podcast it. Let's set a date 200 years from this day.
Let's all meet here.
We're gonna come back and discuss that. Issue. I think there's some archaeologists outside right now pounding on the floor.
Right.
No, they're done. Okay, good. They found what they came for.
We're gonna blow through this.
We've got another sad story.
Oh, we do.
Next,
we do have another sad story also from Variety.com. It's called Midnight Rider Insurer Cites Negligence in Refusal to Pay Claim. It's by Ted Johnson. He's the author. And it centers around the tragedy filming on the Midnight Rider set.
About Greg Allman.
It was a film about the singer Greg Allman, his life, and basically, if you aren't up to speed on what happened, essentially they went out to film on some train tracks and didn't get the permits necessary, I guess, to film. Mm-hmm. A train came, they say unexpectedly. It was a dream scene where there was a metal bed on the train tracks. The train blew through it, split it apart, basically into shrapnel. And a bunch of people were injured, and one of the production assistants or the camera operators was killed. So this insurer's citing negligence. I think maybe rightfully so, but you have to also ask the question: what is insurance for? In their refusal to pay this claim.
I think it's important to point out that this is not this claim is not about the death actually,
right?
And that is being handled as a criminal case actually for criminal trespassing and involuntary manslaughter, which all of the executive producers are named in that suit.
Yeah, the director, producer, the executive producer, and assistant director are all named.
Right.
Yes. So they might
So that's going to be a different thing. All this is about is a claim that the LLC that was set up to make this film has filed a claim to cover the stopping and startup costs of the production that they had to go through for about 15 months, and actually centers around the director who has developed PTSD from this tragic event, which makes sense. I mean, I would hope that
I hope you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can imagine that being true.
Right.
Of course, the insurer wants to claim that as specious because they were negligent, and in their opinion, they were negligent in letting this thing happen in the first place.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing makes me cringe.
It's
of course, like this always does, because it's like, really, this person died in the making of this film, and what we're sitting here talking about is this. I really want to swear, and I won't, but this insurance claim that's about money.
I agree.
Like,
it's really upsetting. I mean, it's their.
Can we just stop, please?
Yeah,
do we really need to degrade ourselves this much?
Yeah, I mean, it's their job, so I guess you could say that. It's insurance companies' jobs to basically not pay out any money, so they're gonna be dicks, you know. But yeah, exactly. It's like, why are we talking about this? And I was even thinking that and I to be honest, I didn't read the comments for this, so maybe that's what this was about. But I don't want to talk about that aspect of this story,
right?
The insurance money. But that's fine.
So I'm over this, but I'm certainly interested to see what kind of criminal cases brought, and it has a lot. It's going to have a lot of precedents that are going to be set, at least in Georgia, about what's possible for the entertainment production. So
I agree. Well, and maybe this is another. I mean, like the article we talked about earlier about the accident in Korea. Maybe this is just another sort of remember that your actions have consequences, and we're dealing with serious things. You might think, oh, it's just a film, it's make believe, but
it's not.
But it's real life, so be aware.
Okay, moving on. Our next article is from the Clyde Fitch Report, which is a blog online about art, politics, and debate, where art and politics are debated. And the article is entitled, "This is Subscription Model is Agency, the New Individuality." So what the article is debating about is a lot of different modes that theaters in particular have been trying to employ in the last decade or so to work around the traditional subscription model to plays. So, it used to be my grandma had a subscription to her local opera house, and she would go to every show, or 5 shows out of 7, or whatever it was. And her subscription tickets were on a certain day. So you buy them for Saturday night performances or Tuesday night performances, and there are different rates based on that.
Yeah.
Especially in opera, because a lot of times the middle of the week performances might not have the top billed singers. There's a lot of different ways that you can kind of futz with the numbers there. That model, there's been a lot of arguments, pro and con, about whether that's failing now. What theaters have been doing to try to augment subscriptions, like giving backstage access, et cetera, et cetera. And this article is more about describing describing the whole thing in the context of personal agency.
Yeah.
So, in this day and age, when we can just watch whatever we want, like this podcast on YouTube, at any time of the day, whenever you want, everything is, just touch and go.
Or like Netflix.
How do we match that style of personal agency, like I'm the agent of my entertainment whenever I want, to our theater model, where you have to come, you have to carve out time and go on a date.
Right. I think I liked the examples he gave of places where you do have a little bit more agency and what and when you see what you see when you see it. And he gave the example of Mixed Blood in Minneapolis that does what they call Flex Pass, so you can see some performances, you're guaranteed some seats, and you go when you feel like it. Which is funny. I mean, it's this funny thing where you're sort of like, how is it different from just showing up whenever you want? But I do like the idea. I mean, the whole thing with subscriptions is that they sort of guarantee that a theater will be able to
keep making money.
Exactly. So it's kind of it's kind of nice. It's a contract without all of the. It's like a non-strict contract that I think, at least for me, seems pretty appealing. It's like, all right, I gotta see 3 shows. I'm actually gonna go do it because I've already paid for them, but I can choose when I do it. I liked that idea.
That might be better and more flexible, especially like in everyday life, like nowadays.
Yeah,
I mean,
and maybe it's just because I'm young that I think that.
No, I agree with you.
But
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the article does a good job of pointing out plenty of places where the subscriber model is perfectly fine and working, like Hollywood Pantages. I don't think that's how it's pronounced. I don't know it. And Brooklyn Academy of Music, which I'm very familiar with, who have both had banner years for subscribers without really doing that much to change what they do. Aside from putting on shows that people want to see. I mean, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that for me was a huge part of this too. It's like, well, I don't want to subscribe to these, repertory theaters where half of it I think is boring or irrelevant.
But also that's sort of the problem, right? Because there's actually an article in this week's Green Page, which we may talk about next week, talking about the risk involved in going to see a piece of art. And like how people are managing that in their lives.
Of course.
So the problem is, if the subscription model only works for stuff that people want to see, like Kinky Boots and Jersey Boys, because they've been popular elsewhere, then what happens to new work?
Right.
How does new work get seen? How does new work grow? So really, the trick is to find a model that both promotes the theater's bottom line and promotes new works being seen.
Well, and that was one of the things I really loved about what Mixed Blood was doing, because they actually looked at their what you get when you subscribe, and one of them was like, you get to see a certain number of the main stage plays. You pick what you want to see, but you can see all of their more experimental stuff.
Right.
So it's like a free pass to everything new, which might be kind of key to this.
Cool.
Like,
and ART in Cambridge,
Yeah.
it also mentions ART in Cambridge, which I've worked at and know that they have the X, which is their sort of experimental, very small black box that's attached to the Loeb Drama Center.
Yeah.
And if you're a subscriber, you get all the 5 main stage plays, but you also get everything in the X, as kind of a bonus. Because they really do want their audience to be sort of well versed in what's happening in theater. So you go see, King Lear or Edward II or something, on Saturday, but then on Tuesday night you get to go see something totally crazy in the Rhine.
Right.
So
which at least for me, I'm sure it's my own personal preference, but that stuff for me is often more rewarding
Yeah.
Experiences.
And if you get it for free, if
Right.
you sort of like get it for free, like as part of
Exactly.
like as a little add-on, then of
Yes.
course the risk all of a sudden is nothing.
Right.
The risk is only your time.
Exactly. It might be terrible, but whatever I saw
It's
play.
free, but like it's
And-
cool. If it's cool, then it's cool.
And you're part of something. To me, if it's something new,
And you also get to my favorite part of like personal agency in a theater setting is to walk out,
right, yeah.
which I do all the time.
And you're told that's why
Like-
God gave you an intermission.
Exactly. It's like being able to throw your peanut shells on the floor at a baseball game,
It
right?
is
Like
amazing.
the day I can't do that is the day I leave America.
Right.
I quit. Okay.
It's a world.
Last article is a little.
Really a meaty piece.
yeah,
I
very
would
meaty
say.
piece.
Yeah, it's gonna take a long time for us to get.
So
into
yeah, there's these protractors. Anyone?
There's these protractors. It's called the Great Pittsburgh Protractor Mystery from Pittsburgh Magazine.
Which I didn't know existed, and
Me
now I do.
neither.
Thank you.
And its author Jordan Locke is basically talking about how there's all these protractors all over the city, and they're glued to various things, signs, steps, bridges, everywhere, are numbered, and they're various colors, and we found about 75% of them, but some
We
are
think,
still
yeah,
MIA.
the highest number. So each one is numbered. So the
Oh,
highest
yeah.
number
Yeah.
one is labeled 456.
456,
And,
yeah.
and of that 456, they found about 300 or something. So,
Yeah, that's a list.
nobody knows who's behind it.
Wait,
I guess,
is there a guy that like make all the list of what like you found?
yeah, we don't think that they're actual protractors. They look as though they're laser cut mimics of protractors.
Probably on our campus.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty on our campus. There's one that's pictured is right on the Panther Hollow Bridge over here.
Yeah. Do you feel like want to like wander around the city to find where all this project?
Yeah, I mean it's hardly Banksy-esque, I have to
Right.
say.
Yeah, I was
Like-
sort of like, okay, but maybe they do mean something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'll come out and the whole meaning behind it will be really, really compelling.
And you'll eat your words.
I will totally eat my words, right? I'll eat a protractor.
On this show.
On this show,
show.
I'll eat a protractor if this turns out to be something that actually compels me in any way.
And in 200 years, you'll come back and eat 200.
Yeah.
So,
So, if you're in Pittsburgh, look out for these protractors, and if you see one that's numbered, I believe, is there a way you can check in? They say
Yeah.
geometry was the first reported, but reported to where?
well, there's a blog where
You
they
can add to
There.
Lige's incomplete master list, last edited here. So,
Yeah.
That's
on our green page at the web address at the bottom of your screen, if you find a protractor, you should go to the article and click in the link that says here, and you can add to the list.
That's the idea.
Be a part of it.
Be a part of the protractor mystery. And that's all we have for you this week. Thank you again for joining us for the podcast. I'm Andrew.
Tetra.
And Caitlin.
Signing off for the week. We'll see you back here next week for more Green Page articles. Have a great week, everybody.